So, thanks for joining me today on the Real Zack Olinger. And today, I just feel called to kind of get into kind of what led me here and about some of what I talk in my other podcast called "It's a Choice" about intuitive decision making and honoring one's truth and trusting the process and surrendering and that kind of thing. So, I've had a couple conversations here over the last probably week with three different individuals who are friends of mine um, around this particular kind of facet of my life and um, how I allow myself to what I call honoring my truth and basically allowing myself to another way I would put it is to be guided to follow the nudges that come up and there's definitely a beginning. There's a genesis point. I can definitely recall what that is and delineate that and see how these seemingly unrelated choices that I made over time all wove together to create the path that I was and am walking and will continue to allow myself to walk. And then, so that was part of the conversation too. Has there ever been a time that I haven't honored these? Would there ever be a time when I didn't honor the nudge or my truth? And over the last 15 years, ever since I started, there has not been a time when I didn't honor that. Uh, and there's never going to be a time that I don't honor that um, because I've experienced both sides, right? There's a price or a cost either way. Um, there's a form of death, in my opinion, either way. If you have something that comes up inside of you, you can feel it. It's your truth. Um, and if you, the choices that you might have to make around honoring that could be massively disruptive or upend your life or just seem completely radical and irrational to everyone around you. Um, there's obviously a lot of fear around that, rightfully so. There's a lot of trepidation and all sorts of mixed emotions, and rightfully so. So that's one cost, right? Is to like step into all of that and honor the truth. Now, the price or cost or the death if you don't honor the truth is just the what ifs, right? The maybe the stories that come up or the constant refocus of like, what if I had just done that? Like, what would have happened? Like, we play these games, and eventually, some of us get over it, some of us don't. But as time, like as our lives go on, like these aren't just like one time, once in a lifetime things. We get nudges all the time, and not like every day necessarily. Yet they happen frequently enough. And how often, are you honoring that? And in my opinion, um, not honoring it is a form of self harm just because it's hey, what's up, Mac? Thanks for watching, man. Um, to me, not honoring those truths is a form of self harm because there's something animating this physical body that is not the physical body. Like at least in my opinion, we are not these physical entities. There's a spirit or something that is animating this, and it's connected to something much larger than us. Just from the amount of limited spectrum that any of our senses can pick up, it's just pretty obvious that there's other things out there that we're not necessarily able to perceive. And then not only that, you got to think about like the heart and the gut. These are other organs or other gateways of energy that we use to base our decisions on. Like, what does our heart tell us? What does our gut tell us? Like, and that to me is also part of honoring the truth. What I'm trying to get at is that like we're used to using the five senses that we have, but then we have like the heart and the gut that also are sensing things that allow us or kind of nudge us one way or another. And if we don't honor those nudges, if we don't honor those truths, that's a form of self harm, right? That's like basically telling yourself that like you're not to be trusted. You can't even trust yourself. And there's a myriad of different ways that it's a form of self harm. Now, then to me, that's a form of death, right? To self harm that way is eventually a form of death. You're killing that part of you. Now, on the flip side, you do honor those nudges. You allow yourself to step into the fear. You allow yourself to flip your life upside down and readjust all of your relationships and make choices that other people will deem radical or illogical or any other myriad of judgments that they may have about it. Um, that's a form of your reality. That's a form of death of your reality or of your or pieces of your ego that are attached to those experiences and to those relationships and to like those circumstances and all of that. So there's and that also could be viewed as like, well, you're harming those relationships. So either way, I view that there is a pretty like when these nudges come up, there's a real potential for extreme transformation to happen one way or the other. Either you're self-harming, in my opinion, and transforming that piece of you and shutting it up and shutting it down, or you decide that you're going to honor your path and your truth, and you totally transform your external world. Um, Now, it's been my experience anyway, and I can see how this is the case. I don't agree with it. I can just see it and understand it. When you decide to go ahead and honor those truths, like and flip your life upside down into these radical things, and I'm not saying that has to happen every time when you're honoring your truth. I'm just saying that like we've all had the nudges where if we made the choice on that nudge, it would radically redefine our life, and our relationships and circumstances, and there's a lot that comes up with that. So anyway, when you go down that path, the other people experiencing that can view it as very selfish, and I could see where that comes from. My counter argument to that is that I view us as all sovereign individuals. Hey, what's up, Victoria? And because of that, we're no different than like nation states, right? We're our own sovereign individual, and therefore, you know what what is in our best interest can come into conflict with what's in other people's best interest. Now, since I view us as all sovereign, I wouldn't say that I should do anything that I wouldn't allow you to do either. So if it's your truth and it changes my life, then I can't argue that. I'm not going to say that that's wrong, or there's to me there's no right or wrong, there just is. So if things got redefined for me because somebody was honoring their truth, I would totally tell them to go and do that. This is why, like, for example, with my own children and the choices I've made over the past year, I told them the exact same thing. I'm like, look, I would rather model to you what it's like to honor your truth, even if I don't agree with you. If you can literally come to me and say, Dad, this is what's true for me, this is what's right for me, I'm not going to argue that. So I'm willing to sacrifice my own relationship for the sovereignty of my children. I want them to have uh, that freedom and that connection to their own power without feeling like they have to like shut that down or ignore it. So I'm just willing to honor their truth enough to allow my relationship to be redefined, is basically what I'm trying to say there. And another, yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to think. If there, I'm just thinking back to these other conversations that I had um, with some of these guys. Um, yeah, sorry, I'm just getting a little bit of a pause here. So, but these are some of the things that have definitely come up in the conversations that I've had with some of the guys here recently, and just seeing. It's not too often, I guess, when I see other people allowing themselves to honor their truth, and when I do, I always have to give like a shout out. I just remember I was in a group and there was a guy who totally left his corporate job, wrote a children's book, and is going down that path and was making good money, um, and just allowed himself to honor his truth. Sorry, I'm just reading Mac's comment here. Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, there's other times when we do things, for our own, ego-based, selfish reasons as well. So that, yeah, for this, like, for my experiences when these come up, it's not serving an ego-based because, like, I have a logical mind. My ego definitely, actually, that brings back some of the other stuff I was going to talk about. So I appreciate that, Mac. There's definitely like a cost of the process as well, right? So when I get these nudges, it's not ego based, being like, oh, how is this gonna like better serve me, like from a perspective of material gain, or some type of ego selfish reason. Because most of the time when these nudges come up for me, I have a giant what the fuck around it, because I know that if I choose to go through that, if I choose to step into that, there's a lot of redefining of my life that happens. And it's not a pleasant experience, redefining these things. Like either form of death is not, I mean, when you talk about transformation, like the whole death and rebirth thing, is the journey is not pleasant, just because there's so many painful experiences from that release, from that detachment, from learning how to let go of those things. Like it's a real testament of self-reflection and seeing like where we have our hooks into things. And it's it's definitely painful. So like uh, I know that another couple of people have commented. My friend John said he didn't think it this way, but I think it's because he gets to see me like as I go through the process. But I know when I go live on these types of things, like I make, when I talk about it, I make it sound easy, or that it's a walk in the park, and it's just anything but. I don't come out live like when I'm literally bawling, or when I want the pain to stop, because there's been times where things just feel like they're being ripped out, and it's not like a day type of process. It's a it's a journey, it's a lifestyle, honestly. And when these nudges come up and redefinitions in my life have to happen, there's a whole a whole process that goes into that. And it's that those pieces of me that have to die to be reborn, that's there's grieving, and there's mourning, and there's definitely questioning. Like I've definitely had my own times when I've questioned, like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, what am I doing? And my logical brain, like, my left brain's definitely like, yeah, this doesn't make any sense. And the only reason I allow myself to keep going and choosing these nudges, even though it's irrational or illogical, is that every time I've followed the nudge, is it's put me exactly where I need to be. Like I can't think of a time when it has, what I like to say, fucked me. It's never put me where I shouldn't be. It's never, you know, left me hanging. Now that being said, there's been times when I can get salty with the universe, and because I'm not, we all like to see and like to know the how and like what the point is, right? That we love to give meaning to things all over the place. And so, because it is a journey, it's not like a, hey, within 24 hours, all of this is going to make sense. I'm going to feel really good about it and all that kind of stuff. It's like, this could be weeks and months, and how, like, without, because I am, because I'm not better than anybody else. I have these moments of like wondering, okay, universe, like I totally followed the nudge. Like I went down the path you that you told me to go down, and like, what's the point? Like where's the upside? Like what's the benefit? Like I'm not seeing it, like I've definitely had these moments for sure. Um and in those moments, like I have salty conversations with the universe. Now, that being said, at the same time, like what buoys me is that because I've gone through this process before a number of times, is that I know that at some point the the aha, or my recognizing, my awareness of like, oh, this is why I'm here. Like I'm here. Like I wouldn't be here had I not had that experience or made that choice, or whatever. It eventually becomes clear. It's just getting there, because like I'm patient with a lot of things and not so patient with some things. And I feel like when I up into my life, I can be pretty patient, and at the same time, like I could lose it, because I'm like, what's going on? Like, why did this happen? Yeah, why is this happening for me? Right, exactly that. Yeah, and so anyway, like uh, that I think inspired the question of like, why, like, what causes you to choose this, or would there ever be a time when you don't choose this? Um, and because like it is a disintegration anxiety, like we know that, like it is a disintegration piece of our self that has to be reintegrated in a new way. Um, and some people would still ask, like, why would you, like, what would cause you to choose that? And I just go back to like the first, like in my mind, my genesis point of when I started to do it is that it just literally felt like something I shouldn't ignore. It felt like the right thing to do. And that's another thing I like to qualify. I think I believe I said in the other one, like, not what feels good, like what feels right. Um, and I just, my very first genesis point was when I was nudged to stay home and watch my oldest son. I had a job. I got the nudge. I was like, you should leave that job, watch your kid. And I'm like, that's not going to be good for my marriage, man. Like, the wife's not going to think that's a good idea. And again, so like this type of nudge, came up, and I knew that if I stepped into that, it would be redefining so many aspects of my life, and that to honor that would be, what would appear to be dishonoring, somebody else and that kind of a thing. And I just have to go back to like, whose life are we living, right? And if I honor my truth, and I have to leave it up to the other people in my life to respond, through their truths, right? Like however they respond to me honoring my truth, and I can't fault them for that, right? They're just responding with what feels right for them too. Um, and in my life, in my view, that's how we all create our circumstances that are required for us to learn the lessons that we're here to learn. So, um, the more that we honor that truth, the more authentic, like those lessons can be for us all the way around. And so back to the back to the genesis point, I just allowed myself to step into that fear and redefine my life that way, and found the daycare people that ended up watching our kids. It just led to a great relationship that way. And ended up watching both of our kids, and they were just starting out, like the people that ended up watching our kids were just starting out doing daycare. And sometimes like those types of like proofs, right? Those things of like, when you point to those, well, this happened. Sometimes people in your life may be like, yeah, that's not an adequate explanation, or that they might be hurt from the redefinition of the relationship, where they don't feel like that's an adequate example. And that's another thing too about like, anytime I make these choices, some people will be like, so what happened, or like what caused that? And I'm like, look, you're asking for a logical reason. You're looking for some type of A, B, C, or D. I can't give you that. The only thing I can give you is that it felt right. And so many times in our lives, like, going, that particular reason is not reason enough for most people. They're like, the fuck, it felt right. Like, what's that about? Yeah, like, so um that's that's another part of the process too, is navigating people's reactions to that. But again, that's just their truth. If it's not a good enough reason for them, it's not a good enough reason for them. Yeah. So so that's what I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I was looking to tie that into. um but yeah, that genesis point with watching my son was the beginning, and I just allowed myself to step into that fear and redefine the relationships. And for me, there was proof, that it was the right thing to do, and just allowed myself to continue to do that. And like I say, in every instance that it's come up, while the journey has had its own form of pain, the destination has also been exactly where I needed to be. Um, so for me, I look, my desire for everyone is to allow themselves to honor their truths. Um, it's like our in my mind, it's like the highest form of um, I don't know, honor and connection. It's like something's coming through. If there's actually since there's a spirit animating this body, and that connection to whatever is larger than us, that's the thing that allows me to keep going with it. Is I'm just going to honor that every time, because everything else out here is below that form of manifestation, and I would rather honor the bigger process, I guess, regardless of how it looks out here. Because things can appear really shitty, they can appear really messed up. And that's another thing I've learned going through this process is that appearances like don't matter. They don't matter. It's not that I can't get hung up on them sometimes because I sure as shit can. Like I said, I'm not better than anybody else. It's just that I've learned to like really question that appearances are not, you know, there's always something below that. So anyhow, I'm going to wrap this up and I appreciate you guys listening. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks, Mac. Thanks, Victoria, and anybody else who's watching now or later. And I will see you guys next Tuesday. All right. Love you guys.